Hello and welcome to Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, where I interview entrepreneurs doing startups across borders and the investors who support them, with a focus on companies that have some relationship to Latin America. My guest today is Jose Cayasso, a Costa Rican entrepreneur who is co-founder and CEO of Slidebean, a software company that helps people stop wasting time wrestling with presentation design. Slidebean's product, Presentations That Design Themselves, is used by thousands of people around the world, from students to business executives. We'll cover Caya's journey from Costa Rica to New York City to launch his first business, what he learned in his first startup, and how he used his experience to create Slidebean, which is now 20 employees in Costa Rica and 2 in New York City. We'll talk about the fundraising process and Caya's journey to raising money from Start-Up Chile, 500 Startups, Carao Ventures, Firstrock Capital, and of course Magma Partners. Be sure to listen for Caya's tips on how to run a business with 2 offices in different countries, how he thinks about scaling a SaaS business, and why he invests time in creating investor updates. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Caya over the past year since Magma invested, and it's been great to be able to talk more in depth for the podcast. We had a few technical difficulties with sound in the very beginning, but pushed through it. I think it's worth it. Without further ado, Jose Cayasso. All right. Thanks for all the patience with this. Welcome to the podcast. We had a few crazy audio delays when we got started, but finally, I think we're good to go.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me over.
So, where are you in the world today?
So I'm in our so far a little lonely New York office. We have an office here where sometimes myself and Derek, who is our U.S. VP of Sales, sometimes we work out of here, and then the rest of the team, which is now like 20 people, they're based down in Costa Rica.
Wow! So you have you're in New York City and then also Costa Rica, and you're from where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from Costa Rica, and I love it. But then I also love New York, and then for the whole we actually launched Slidebean from New York, and we do feel there's some added value of having permanent presence in the city for PR and marketing purposes and sales. I think it's a lot easier to grasp for our customers. It's a lot easier to grasp that they're dealing with a U.S. company.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we've seen that with our companies in Magma as well. So why don't you just tell us maybe with 1 minute overview of what do you do at Slidebean?
So Slidebean is a very, very easy to use presentation app, online presentation tool. So what we solve is just how long and how painful it is to create PowerPoint presentations. So instead of having to kind of like drag and drop, like figure out how your content's going to look, get design skills to have a deck that looks good, Slidebean solves that for you. So all you need to do is add the content, and then the presentation just gets designed automatically.
Yeah, and as somebody with terrible design skills that people have been making fun of me for a long, long time, I can definitely say that Slidebean has saved me lots of time and embarrassment. So thanks for that.
Fantastic. That's what we were trying to do.
So how did a guy from Costa Rica decide to open up a tech business in New York City? Why go to New York City in the first place? How did you end up there?
So I was, the first time I visited New York was for a previous company that I was working for. We got accepted into an accelerator here in New York City. And that's kind of like the first chance that I had, coming from Costa Rica, not very much familiar or not familiar at all with the whole startup thing going on. This was 2012. This was the first time in New York was this huge crash course on the stuff that was happening in tech and then startups and how different it was and how so far ahead it was compared to what we had in Costa Rica. And I really fell in love with it. So that company didn't work out, but as I returned to Costa Rica, I kind of gathered my other 2 co-founders, and we all had this kind of issue with PowerPoint, and we all realized how much of a struggle it was, not only for us as graphic designers or as web designers, but also as viewers, like as an audience, having to put up terrible presentations from the presenter. That's just not a great way to deliver information. So that's what we set out to solve. And that's what we've been solving so far. And I think it's what users appreciate the most. The fact that they don't have to waste so much time. And really the game changer for a user is when they see the presentation that they built that they couldn't have built otherwise. And when they start getting feedback from that, we helped this meetup here in New York City the other day, and kind of like the general consensus from the users was like, I showed this to my boss and he said, who did you hire to do it? No, I did it myself. And like that, I can't believe you did something that looks so good. Is what really gets people to stick around.
Yep, I think that's true, at least in my experience. So let's go back to what company were you working for? Was it your company, or did you work for a different startup when you first went to New York?
Yeah, so I was one of the co-founders as well. It was this mobile gaming platform. We were using location on your phone to generate a custom levels and custom game layouts just based on where you were actually based in the world. It was a cool idea. We were two rookies, and we didn't focus on revenue fast enough, so we went out of business pretty quickly. But it was my first startup experience.
And so your Slidebean is much different business model, much different focus. What did you take from your first business? What lessons did you take from your first business to decide to go with the Slidebean model?
I think that one, and it's probably the lesson that I always talk about first, is I kind of went through that terrible going out of business process, and it sucks not having money, and you're still being in love with your company, but just not being able to afford your own living or keeping the company alive. So a big focus on revenue was something that we set out to do from the very beginning. You still, and it still happens. You still have, your Snapchats and your Twitters that just go out for years without actually getting revenue or becoming profitable. But we went for profitability a lot faster, and for revenue certainly. And I think that made a difference for us as a company, especially compared to some other competitors that have gone out of business in the past few months, simply because they went the other route. They went the let's get 1 million users first and then worry about revenue.
Yeah, I think that's the type of business that I like as well personally as an entrepreneur, and then now as an investor, especially with the different sized capital markets in the countries that we start operating in. Where raising $1 million in Chile or in Costa Rica is a lot of money. It goes a lot farther. So, and there's not those $10 million Series A or B rounds that are nearly as accessible. So I think it almost like pushes us into building companies that are a little more revenue first. I don't know if you saw the same sort of thing when you were starting Slidebean.
It's true. I think it's a disadvantage that we have to play with being, or starting in Latin America. Raising $1 million has happened. I mean, at least in Costa Rica, has happened very, very few times. So yeah, you just can't. That route is not really an option unless you are based in New York City or the Valley. And also, it relates to living and operational costs. I don't think in Costa Rica and many other Latin American countries, you don't really need $1 million, to get your company to a great position for a Series A. $1 million is a lot of money in those countries, and you probably don't need it. Whereas in New York City, for example, $1 million is not that much runway if you think about it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we see the same sort of thing with all across Latin America, not just in Costa Rica. But so what made you decide as a guy living in Costa Rica that you could do it in the US? Because when I see a lot of entrepreneurs that apply either to Magma or even ones that we invest in, they're scared. They don't want to go to the US. They don't want to make the jump. And we sort of have to talk them into it. What made you have the courage, or knew that you could do it, or wanted to go straight there?
I think that first accelerator experience, the chance to pitch some investors here, the chance to develop some relationships really helped. When we moved into New York City with Slidebean, it was not our first time here. We already knew a few people, we already knew a few investors and a few advisors that we wanted to get in touch with. So it wasn't a complete, hey, I'm just arriving here, I'm a tourist, let's see what happens. So that was definitely an advantage the second time we were here with a business. But yeah, I can totally understand why, coming from Latin America, moving to a country, and it's probably a city, be that New York or San Francisco, that's going to be 3-4 times your living expenses in whatever country you're from. Then yeah, that's obviously very scary. And for an early stage business, there's a large question on, is it worth it? Is it worth it for me to increase my burn by 4x just to be here? I would say probably not at the very earliest stages. But there's you definitely need to have that foot set out there, not only to meet investors or meet the right people, but to portray the right image to users. That's one of those examples, especially one of my favorites, is Audi being a Colombian company, or having most of their team based there. I didn't know that. When I first started using Audi, not because we shared an investor. I actually used it and liked it. I assumed they were a U.S. company. It was only later that I found that they were Latin American. So I think that's an advantage many Latin American countries can play. We're on the same time zone. There's a big Latin American community in the U.S., so it's not completely weird to get an email from a founder that has a Latin name, but that wouldn't be an issue, I think. Yeah,
I think the part where you said they're a Latin American company that you didn't realize. I mean, there probably are. I don't know for a fact, but I would assume they're probably incorporated in the U.S. as well. So I mean, they are a U.S. company. They just happen to have some workers in Latin America, right?
Yeah, that's right. But similar to us, and we kind of play that card ourselves. So we are incorporated in the U.S. We have to be for our investment, and we have to be for billing purposes. It's just a lot easier to be a U.S. company. So yeah, we consider ourselves a U.S. company. We launched our platform from here, but truly we have 20 people versus 2 people in Costa Rica and New York. So we're also very much a Costa Rican company.
And what has been the reaction from either clients or investors or even employees when they find out that you've got this, what is that, about 90% of your team is in Costa Rica? Have you had good feedback, bad feedback? Do people know anything about Costa Rica or even Latin America in general when you talk to them? Or what have you heard?
Yeah, I think Costa Rica, we have a slight advantage because Costa Rica is very well positioned among investors. They probably have their honeymoons or attended a wedding down in Costa Rica, so they've all been and know it's a stable, safe country, and that's that obviously helps, and it makes a difference. So from the team and for employees, it's just fine. The Costa Rican team actually looks forward. Many of them have flown to New York. There's one other Costa Rican team member with me now, and then they everybody loves New York, I guess. That's not an issue.
That's interesting. And so you talk about having a big part of your team in Costa Rica. What are some of the disadvantages of that business model?
So it's all about your burn. It's all about the type of plan that you can afford. Actually, relating to that question specifically, I think that there's been a growing number of companies that it's not keeping an outsourced team, because I don't really believe in outsourced teams. Like hiring a team that doesn't have a co-founder with them, that's in a completely different country where the other founder has never been. That for me is an outsourced team, and it's not very efficient because there's this inevitably, and we still struggle with this a little bit. There's inevitably this gap of communication. And that just becomes a larger gap if you don't know that team in person. But we don't consider ourselves like an outsourced team. We have a team that the Costa Rican team has two of the founders permanently based there. So it's also we have the same company culture across both offices. We have the same people, the same it's a lot closer together. So it's not that classic outsourced team, and investors seem to react very well to that. I think it also relates to tech talent. Tech talent in New York and San Francisco is just unaffordable. You are inevitably going to pay a six-figure salary to your CTO, which is someone you need to hire probably from the get-go, and that will run a company out of business in a few months. Whereas tech talent in Costa Rica is also expensive, but obviously not at that point. And the whole rise of startups and tech companies really has developers excited about the chance of working with a startup. We struggled at the very beginning. 2012 for a developer to quit their day job. That's probably well paid and jump into uncertainty with a startup. You saw less of that, but you see more and more developers kind of taking that risk. Simply because running your own startup has become cool. It probably happened a few years later than in the US, but it's happened.
Yeah, we've seen similar stuff across Chile, Colombia, Argentina. Have you seen a trend at all of US or European expats going to Costa Rica that are interested in working in tech?
Very, very little. I know of a couple of kind of like started boot camps that have started to advertise a Costa Rican getaway to kind of get your startup working. I'm honestly not a big believer in those sort of boot camps. I don't think that it's distracting. Like I don't think you're going to get a lot of stuff done if you're in a Costa Rican beach. But yeah, it's happening. We've become a little bit of a hub, or at least the closest hub you can find in Central America. And you do have a lot of other Central American entrepreneurs moving to Costa Rica because it's less of a jump than going all the way to the U.S. You obviously don't have to jump through all the immigration hoops, and you're based in a better position with a set of users or potential customers that's, for example, much more willing to pay online, better bank penetration, that sort of thing.
Let's talk a little bit about how you financed the company so far. So you were in Start-Up Chile, right? Was that the first money that went through into the company?
It was. So yeah, it was the first foreign or external company, external money that we raised. Before we got into Start-Up Chile, we used about, I'll say, 50% of our time to develop Slidebean and 50% of our time to do consulting. So we ran a few consulting projects that helped us get through. And it was just it was just like a don't quit your day job sort of situation before we had enough money to work in Slidebean full time. So yeah, Start-Up Chile was the first time where we they kind of covered for that cost, and then we were able to dedicate our time 100% to Slidebean.
And what year did you go to Start-Up Chile, or what generation were you in?
So we were batch 8. We arrived in Chile towards the end of 2013.
So I was in the pilot round back in 2010. So I think I was probably traveling a lot when you were here. So I don't think we maybe met each other maybe once or twice in a barbecue or something, but I don't think we ever connected. What was your experience in Start-Up Chile? Did you guys get a lot of work done? Was it a lot of a lot of barbecues and not much work? How was it for you?
Essentially, does feel like college a little bit because you have a lot of young people. You do have a lot of very early stage companies, and then that's inevitably a little distracting. So what's good is that if you come with your the most talented teams that went to Start-Up Chile made it. Those are the teams that learned how to focus. Those are the teams that partied but still got a lot of work done. It can absolutely be done. And for us, again, the chance to stop our consulting and dedicate 100% to Slidebean was fundamental. We actually developed most of the first version of our product in those 6 months that we were in Start-Up Chile, and it worked as a catapult to get accepted eventually into 500 startups. The experience with Start-Up Chile was great. If I had to say something negative about it, I'd say it's kind of like the just being careful about the distraction of many young people, inevitably some founders that are not so focused or that don't have their startups figured out yet. Overall, we great community and great experience.
Yeah, if you can avoid the people who are there for Asado Chile instead of Startup Chile, and focus down on your product, I think it's pretty interesting. So you did your 6 months in Chile, and then where'd you go?
So after that, we moved to New York. We felt it was important to be in New York for the launch. We actually got some press around it, probably thanks to being in New York City and positioning ourselves as a New York company. We incorporated during that time. We were part of Untitled Ventures again with some different. So Untitled Ventures was the accelerator I was part of a couple of years back. We got into a deal with them. I felt, even though I had been part of the process already, I felt it was important for the other founders to kind of go through that U.S. accelerator process. We absolutely did not expect to move to 500 afterwards. So, kind of that agreement was our planned U.S. accelerator experience, which I think was necessary. And also, having been through doing it before, I kind of knew, the mistakes I had made in my first time through there. I used most of my time during that Dream Ventures to meet as many people as possible. And, some of the investors that ended up joining the company came from that, those back-to-back meetings that I set up during that period.
And so then you raised some local money from Costa Rica, right? How did that come about?
So it all happened kind of simultaneously as we, that big milestone was 500 startups. 500 has a much stronger name behind them, one that Costa Rican investors really jumped into. It was kind of simultaneous. Us joining 500 startups with us raising our first actual round, which was somewhere around $250K, which in combination with 500's investment, it was really the first money we had ever had to decently spend and take risks in terms of marketing. So after that round, if you look at our historic growth, like that has a significant change on when we actually started growing the company.
Did you do 500 in the U.S. or in Mexico?
The U.S. We lived in Mountain View for another 4 months.
Awesome. And so when you raised the money and you talked about your marketing, and I want to dig into the marketing in a second here, but did you already have your product market fit with an idea of how much money you were going to be able to spend on ads and get clients out? Or did you raise the money and then validate that and figure it out? Where were you in the process?
So we had an idea of product market fit. We had an idea of how we were going to scale the company, and that's the idea that I pitched. It was the wrong idea, and we know that now, because at that point we were basing all our growth and all our expansion opportunities on just figuring out. I don't want to use the word viral, but an organic growth model where there's just users presenting and exposing their presentations to other users would draw more people to sign up. Like that was our growth strategy, our growth engine plans then. And it was kind of working, but it was just not fast enough. And that's something that the folks at 500 pointed out. That's the classic question of, well, here's $100,000. How can you spend this money efficiently to get spend $50,000 in user acquisition and get $150,000 worth of lifetime value? Like, can you do that with your current model? And we couldn't. There was no solution. We tried on this organic, so that actually forced us to pivot in our pricing. Many of our users don't know this, but our first ever pricing at Slidebean was somewhere around $5 a month. And through a number of iterations and pricing tests, we landed on our current pricing, which is almost 10 times that. The reason why one of the reasons why we had to do that was because there was simply no efficient, profitable way to acquire customers when your lifetime value is based on a $5 a month subscription. Whereas when we started focusing in businesses, businesses obviously having more acquisition power and being able to seeing the value in our $49 a month subscription when we have now, that made a tremendous difference in our growth. So like the investors that joined our first round got our pitch for the which we believe would work, obviously, but got our pitch for kind of organic growth, and that changed significantly during the course of 500. We went out of that process with pivoting from B2C to B2B, and that's what we've been doing since.
And how did you first pick $5 a month as your pricing, and then how did you raise it your 10 times over the next, was about 2 years? So number one was kind of comparing ourselves to the competition. We wanted to be cheaper than our competitors, so cheaper than what you would pay for your Microsoft Office suite, cheaper than what you'd pay for your Prezi. So that was our kind of rookie solution. Like, why would people prefer Slidebean now? Because it's a couple bucks cheaper. But that's not really the way it works. People don't find the value in your product, they're going to cancel anyway, whether it's $5 or $1 a month. So it was a combination of adding more features, making our product more solid and stronger, and a combination of also testing, A/B testing the pricing. We realized kind of first test that we made, and we fought back on this so much against the folks at 500 who were kind of pushing us to try different pricing. The first test we made was testing our $5 a month plan versus $160 a year subscription. So that's around $13 a month, but you couldn't pay the monthly fee. You had to go for the full year. And we A/B tested that, and it turned out that the conversion rate on either pricing was similar. So the difference is with the other pricing, you would make at least 2x in MRR, and we would collect all that revenue right away. Which for a growing bootstrapping company, being able to collect your subscription revenue up front and being able to reinvest that in more growth, that was fundamental. So that's the first iteration, and we went through and then we continue to do that. We go through a number of tests to kind of figure out what pricing is too high, what pricing is too low. Even different business models. We recently introduced an option that's actually not a subscription but a single presentation purchase. To make sure that the people that actually get a subscription, we can tailor and attend to them a lot better. So one of the most interesting things about looking at your monthly updates that you send is how focused you are on getting people to stay and love the product and lowering churn. How did you decide to focus on that? Why is that important? And can you walk us through a little bit about how you've done it over the last, say, 6 months or so, looking at getting churn to the levels that you're interested in?
Sure. So churn is like cancer. It's for a SaaS company, churn is the worst thing that could happen to you. One, because users are churning because they're not finding value in your product, and that's bad. Or users are churning because the business model is not right, and that's bad. So churn is a reflection of issues in the business that you have to look into. So our first approach into churn was simply, let's just send more emails to users, or let's just try to engage them better, or let's decrease the pricing to see if that changes, and it doesn't. I want to call those half measures, because they might help, they might move the churn a point or two, but what churn is reflecting is that there's a problem with either how much value your users are getting out of your product, or the business model itself. So we went through a few months on iterations with these half measures. Stuff that you can do, for example, is Stripe lets you not send the invoices to users automatically. So you can turn that off, and then they don't get them automatically unless they request them, and that helps a little bit. But again, you're kind of like playing a little bit with the system. You're not getting to the root of the problem, which is that the users are not engaged enough. So we started moving to full measures in the last 6 months, and you've probably seen that in our investor updates. So what does that mean? Well, trying to change the business model. That's something we did. Now we offer this pay-per-presentation option, which doesn't force you into a subscription you might not need. If you only need Slidebean once, then which was the case for many of our customers, then you should have an option that tailors to that, rather than having to get a month subscription and cancel it the next month because you don't need it anymore. That's an example. We also significantly increased our post-sales efforts. So we shifted from just serving you automatic emails after you subscribe to actually giving you an account manager. So that's it's a real human person that you get to talk on the phone as soon as you subscribe. That's in touch with you once a month to make sure that you're either getting value out of the product, that you haven't come across any roadblocks, that you are using all the features that we have in the product, that we have implemented into the product. So the users that we call fully onboarded, so the users that we have taught through this process about everything that they can do with Slidebean, they don't churn. And that's huge for marketing, because if you have, I'll give you an example, if you have a $49 a month subscription and, your average churn is 10%, so 10% of users each month churn. So that means, that your users are going to stick around for about 8-9 months, and your lifetime value is going to be around $450. But if you decrease that by half, then your lifetime value becomes over $1,000. So for the same user that costs you the same to acquire, you are now, you're not getting them to stay a lot longer. Not only obviously to pay you more, but to get more value out of the product, to give you feedback, to bring other users, and to help you develop a better product. So for a SaaS company, it's really fundamental, and we probably didn't pay enough attention to churn until about a year ago. But it was a problem, and we made huge efforts to take care of it.
And do you have any resources that you would recommend to SaaS entrepreneurs that maybe are a little earlier in the game than you are today, of places they should be reading up on, what is an acceptable churn rate, or how to go about lowering it, or even just some direct advice to them?
Yeah, so one of my favorite blogs is Barometrics. Josh, the CEO of Barometrics, is, they have this whole transparency policy. And then, they're very open. They're actually 100% open about their data, about what efforts they've done to reduce churn, and how which ones didn't. But it lets you, Barometrics having their data open, they let you look into the company's data, from 2-3 years ago. So you can know on a specific month what happened, like how did their churn look. And we looked into Barometrics data a lot to kind of understand their different pricing plans and how they churn differently. And if that was a reflection of the type of user. So that's a great resource that was super useful for us. I think that the content that Saster is generating is also very useful. So they have a podcast now, they have a blog, and they also have their yearly event. But it's probably the standard or the go-to source for SaaS content.
Yeah, so one other thing I wanted to jump into was your investor updates. We have 32 companies in our portfolio, and you guys by far send the best updates, and not just because your numbers are good. How did you decide to send updates as detailed as you do? How much time do you spend doing it, and what made you decide to do it?
Well, thank you first. I'm glad to hear that the updates are good. So I probably spend about one morning every month writing the update. A few things that are useful around it. It forces me to explain kind of what I'm thinking and what we're thinking as a team, and to kind of put our strategy into words. And that's useful sometimes. Like I've come up with great ideas while writing the update. Simply like thinking it differently. Because sometimes myself and the rest of the team, we're so deep into our metrics that we kind of forget to take an outer look at what's going on, and if that's making sense at all. So that's one. I like to keep my investors happy. We're every month we're less and less scared of going out of business, but probably in the earliest stages. I wanted to make sure that if that happened, that investors were kind of aware of what was going on, the decisions we made that kind of changed them, rather than just finding out, oh, wait, we spent all your money and we're out. So, we're a much bigger company now, and that we're less concerned with going out of business. But that was actually a real motivation at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think, my lawyer, when I had my first company, when he first agreed to represent us, told me that he would do it and give us a nice discount in the rates if we sent him, even though he wasn't an investor at the beginning, if we sent him a monthly investor update, because it would force us to get into the practice. And he echoed exactly what you said. You never want to surprise an investor, even if it's good news, because it's better to have them with you, so that if it does ever go wrong, you know exactly what's going on and can actually start to help you. I found it when I had my businesses to be really, really helpful, like exactly what you said, thinking through exactly what you're doing. And many times I would find things that I should have been doing that maybe slipped off my to-do list, but I knew, I got to put this in the investor update. I better do it. And I still keep that practice today, even as an investor, sending out monthly updates on all the companies to my partners so that they know what's going on. And what I found is that it almost is like an extra checklist to make sure that everything that you're supposed to do, you did. And if I could convince entrepreneurs to do one thing in investor relations, it would be to send one update once per month that doesn't have to be super, super, super detailed, but enough info there that they can start to help and make decisions for you and with you. So,
and that's another thing. Like, I think that it's fantastic. It's an amazing experience to have a company of your own. I like to think that most of the decisions that we make in Slidebean are made as a team, and not they just don't rest in me. But yeah, like I also want somebody with the authority to kind of second guess myself, second guess what decision we made, and sometimes we've made a decision and then an investor asks like, hey, why did you guys figure out doing that? And then through that thinking process, and through that even emailing process where we're kind of explaining our thinking behind it, we might realize that we were wrong and that there was another approach to that and that sort of thing. So that's useful. It sounds counterproductive, but it's actually nice to have somebody to report to sometimes, rather than just being yourself accountable.
Yeah, I think that's definitely makes sense. One of the other things that I've seen that you did that has been really interesting and that I share with other entrepreneurs is your blog post that you did on growing the company through online marketing. Can you talk a little bit about what you did in that post? And obviously we'll put a link to it so that they can look through it after. But what did you do there? And then what motivated you to write that up and share it?
Absolutely. So I love that post. It's probably one of my favorite blog posts ever. Things that people appreciate from that article are the fact that it's very honest and not buffer or their metrics transparent, but pretty transparent in terms of how much we spend, in terms of what we did, how our team looked in different stages, an idea of the revenue that we were getting, at a certain point in the company's journey. And I think that's just content that you can find anywhere, and that's what people appreciate. Nobody's that open about their marketing strategy. First, it takes a very long time to write, and second, people are naturally secretive about their company's growth. But we kind of leverage that fear of sharing that sort of content, to build an article that people would like and would read. The ultimate test for any article we write is when we post it on Reddit. Because Reddit is, if they hate it, they will hate it, and they will trash you or probably ban you out of a subreddit for it. But if they like it, it'll go to the top, and they'll share it, and they'll interact with you and ask other questions. And that's probably our best Reddit reactions article. Article in terms of Reddit reactions we've ever seen. So yeah, there'll be kind of like it tells the story of how we decided to jump into content marketing. How much it costs. So, we probably spent around $70,000 over the course of a year just doing content marketing, whether it's blogging or publishing content or finding backlinks or finding press, just like pure content. But how the returns looked for that. So at the time of writing, we had already booked around $250,000 out of the people that came from our content marketing efforts, because before that we didn't rank in Google, nobody knew about us, and we came out of that process with over 40,000 readers on our blog, with amazing Google rankings that we actually outranked Prezi on a few of their keywords, simply because we built all this content around it. So there's SEO is kind of like this secretive science. And then for people to know, it's a secret science. So kind of like giving this other perspective on what myths around SEO work and which don't. Like that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's a great blog post. So congratulations again for doing it, and I'll link it up in the show notes so that more people can see it. So what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs that maybe aren't in Silicon Valley or New York already? Maybe they're in smaller cities in the US, maybe they're in Latin America, maybe they're somewhere else, that want to follow your lead and start to do business in the States with kind of the same model.
Sorry. So I think that it's fundamental not to think of this Latin American office as an outsourced team or as an overseas team, but think it as a fundamental part of your company. It obviously helps if you have a co-founder that comes from those areas, but you can do that. You can do that even in the U.S. Like if you have, you can absolutely have your CEO or your salesperson in the city where he needs to be, whether that's San Francisco or New York, the startup hubs, and then keep the rest of the team anywhere else in the U.S. And that's absolutely fine to do. And that's again, you're a short flight away. You have a direct line of communication. You have the same time zone, and more importantly, you develop the same culture. So you have that opportunity to everybody in the team knows themselves, and people that know themselves work a lot better. There are so many companies that are betting on this remote office thing. Buffer is probably one of the biggest and most successful examples of having a distributed team. I still don't buy into the idea. I still see a lot of kind of in-office collaboration that doesn't happen when you have a remote team. Starting from the little minutes that you waste, getting the call right and getting your internet connection right, or the calls that break up. But just the conversations that happen over lunch or the conversations that happen over coffee that don't happen if you have people working from home all the time. There's still some intrinsic value to that. And I understand that other companies have been successful without that, but I'm still a big fan of just in-office stuff.
Have you, when you talk to investors in the States, have you had any pushback from having your office in Costa Rica? And I ask because with two of our more successful companies in Magma, Property Simple, and Group Raise, which recently, Adrian and Devin are on the podcast previously, had a lot of different investors that either just sort of had no idea what was happening in Latin America and just sort of were not really even willing to listen to it, to others that said, yeah, we'll invest, and we'll invest at a nice valuation with a lot of money, but close your office in Chile or close your office in Colombia. Have you run into that at all?
No, we didn't. Maybe some of the investors that didn't end up putting money in Slidebean didn't do it because of that. But I don't know. They didn't tell me. But no, from our active investors, we haven't had any pushback. And even investors or advisors that have met out of the potentially investing in Slidebean context, I would ask them, how does this story sound to you? Does this story sound solid to keep this, to keep this back office here with our dev team and our support team, and to always think of sales and marketing in the U.S. And they've been fine with it. They think they'd be a solid, and I think a lot more companies are doing that now, especially because of the development costs in the U.S. But no, we haven't had any pushback. I think that as long as you have some things that we have taken care of. One, again, there needs to be a real permanent presence in the city, and we've done that. Second, and this relates a little bit to potential acquisitions. It obviously relates to the current political climate, but you need to have your immigration solved. So as soon as we had enough revenue and a decent business structure and so on, we applied for L1 visas for the founders, so that and none of us have permanently relocated here, but we like to think that we want to confirm to investors that if the company makes an offer today, we can move. Or if there's a larger round, if the business requires us to move, we're willing to do it, and we've solved everything that we need to do about it. We did this very recently, but it's something that we always looked into. That we're ready to solve this as soon as possible.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of getting the visa paperwork ready to go. That's really smart. So well done for that.
Thanks. Again, we probably took too long, and then Trump became president before we had filed. But yeah, that's something you want to take care of. You really never know what's going to happen. So it's good to have that solved.
Yeah, it makes sense. So what advice would you give to investors in the U.S. about why they should be looking at companies that have your structure? Whether that's in Latin America or just even a company that's got an office in New York, but a back office in Madison, Wisconsin, or in Phoenix, Arizona, or something like that.
What should they be looking into?
What advice would you give to investors that are thinking of looking at startups that have your similar structure, that have maybe an office in New York City, but have a back office either in Latin America, or even it could be Madison, Wisconsin, or Phoenix, Arizona, or something like that?
I think it's really understanding, getting a grasp of who the back office team is, and how well they're connected to the headquarters team. They need to feel like the same team. Ideally, one of the founders should be there with the other team permanently. Everyone in the team should know each other. You shouldn't have remote workers that you don't know or that you've never met in person. I think that again, that's just my thinking. I believe this collaboration works as long as both teams, even though they're separate, they're really close to each other. The local team, and I think we haven't really talked about that, but I think that's also been one of our biggest strength. The Costa Rican team, we've built a fantastic startup culture in Costa Rica. I like to think that everybody loves working in Slidebean, not only because we're a little bit out of the box in terms of how an open office should work, the startup idea, that doesn't happen too much in Costa Rica. And then if you have a committed team, and beyond being committed, that they're all friends with each other, they really enjoy going to work every day. And I think that's one of the biggest achievements we've done, building this company culture. So we are not scared of separating the team or keeping two offices, because that culture lives along both spaces. But if you have a team in a country you don't know, with people you've never met, and them being managed by somebody you don't know very well or who's not deeply invested into the company, that's when the outsourced team doesn't really work.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I want to highlight the point you just made about the difference between a normal job in a lot of Latin American countries versus what you can build as a startup. And it's, to me, is one of the biggest advantages of having either your tech team or customer success in Latin America. You can give benefits that maybe don't cost a huge amount of money, but are so much better working experiences than working in a bank or a big retailer. And that, from an entrepreneur and an investor perspective, if you can lower your employee churn, it makes running the business so much easier. Plus, you have a great place to work.
So, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, what's the most surprising thing that either you found yourself when you first went to the U.S. as a founder not from the U.S., or that you think a Latin American founder would have when they first go to the U.S. for running their business?
The most surprising thing, I think it's probably the amount of people that are building their own companies. That was mind-blowing to me, because again, in any of the times that I've lived here in the States, and I'm obviously in a startup environment, but everybody I meet is building their own company, and that makes up for hundreds of entrepreneurs and thousands of companies. We don't get that in Costa Rica because first, it's a very small country, and second, not a lot of people choose to build their own companies. But in here, there's this really, and I think especially in New York, and I felt this much more in New York than in San Francisco. There's a close community. If you have a meetup on a Wednesday night, or even a Wednesday, they have the Tech Executives meetup, which is I think Wednesday at 7 in the morning. You have hundreds of people show up. They want to talk about their business, and they want to share their insight, and they want to collaborate and meet, and so on. So that's very special about New York, and that's something that that doesn't happen in Costa Rica. We have a growing startup community, but whenever there's a meetup or an event, you always go and you're going to see the same people and probably one or two new people, and that's good. Like it's a growing community. But in here, you'll meet hundreds of people who are passionate and doing similar things to you, who can become advisors, potential employees, or simply somebody to blow up some steam about the perks of being a founder.
And what about going back the other way for people that have only done business in the U.S. and maybe don't have any experience with either Costa Rica specifically or LATAM in general? What do you think is the most surprising positive thing about Latin America that either U.S. entrepreneurs or investors don't really know?
At least in my experience, it's talent and the type of talent that you can find in Latin America. Obviously, for a fraction of the price of what you would pay in the U.S. or at least in New York, So we've been able to recruit almost every person or every job description that we publish. We've been able to recruit in Costa Rica. Also, one thing that's very special, very particular about Slidebean as a business is, many of the things that we're doing are new. The only employees that we could hire that have experience doing exactly what we're doing are people who probably worked at Prezi or who worked at Microsoft PowerPoint in the past. But beyond that, we're still hiring. Everybody needs to learn, and everybody's doing things that have never been done. That's probably the case for many companies. So you can know about marketing and you can have experience there, but marketing for a regular business and marketing for a startup is completely different. And then especially if you're introducing a product that doesn't exist or creating a need that's not there yet, you have to be creative. So it's not something that necessarily in the US you'll find people with experience, but sometimes what you need is people who can learn fast, people who can be creative. And that's the type of team that we set out to recruit in Costa Rica.
That's really interesting. So what's next for Slidebean?
So it's exciting times. We've been working for most of this year in what we call Slidebean 3.0. which is a whole new version of our app. We've solved a lot of the problems that users were finding in our current app. We've completely rebuilt it from the ground up, and we're launching that in a couple weeks. So it's kind of like that final sprint towards that launch. And then related to that, and we're launching a completely new branding. The logo that we had now on our color palette, we decided in an afternoon, because we didn't have a lot of time, and that was just the logo that we had been using. But we actually did it right this time, and we came up with. We actually hired an agency that came up with an amazing branding that we were all really excited about. And then finally, we're launching a new initiative that we call Contrast. So this is also around building our brand. I think that one of the biggest differences between your traditional presentation software and Slidebean is that Slidebean really feels that there's a human behind it. Most of our users have talked to our team or have met our team. There's this direct line of communication between our customers and the team. So we're kind of expanding that one step further with an initiative that we call Contrast. So it's a commitment that the company has made to invest $1 every month for every one of our subscribers into initiatives or organizations or teams that are using design to generate impact in the world somehow. So we secretly started doing this a couple months ago. We've supported companies, or organizations or NGOs all over the world. So we started with Costa Rica. This month, the one we picked is actually based here in New York City. It's just this little effort that we're doing. First, again, to build a brand and to create this new connection with our users, to make our users feel part of something else. And to give, obviously, to give back a little bit. We are very, very much very thankful for the luck and the journey that we've had through Slidebean. So excited to get something back.
That's awesome. What was the organization in Costa Rica for the first one?
So it's this organization that has built kind of like an art house in one of Costa Rica's biggest slums. It's called Casa de Luz, you could translate to Lighthouse.
Uh-huh.
So what they do is, again, they built this amazing, beautifully designed structure in the middle of the slum, and they wanted to become this hub for art and music, and just teaching the people that live there just new ways to kind of deal with their situation through art, and obviously ways to rise up and be there with people.
That's really cool. That's a really cool story. So, do you have anything else that you'd like to add, or you want to brag about as we end here?
No, I don't think so. I think this has been a really cool conversation. I don't get to go over the whole Slidebean journey that often anymore. So it's always exciting, and for anybody in the team, it's fantastic memories. But looking back and telling you about it and telling your podcast listeners about it, really, really excites me a lot on what can be accomplished from anywhere. Like I don't like ourselves. Again, we come from Costa Rica. I honestly did not expect we'd be running such a large business so quickly. So it's an exciting experience. I really hope that a lot of people get to experiment something like that.
Yeah, it's been really cool to hear your story. It's been really cool to hear your story, and you're definitely blazing the trail both for companies that want to have the structure that you have, but also just on the marketing side, sharing your knowledge. It's been great, and I hope you keep it up.
Fantastic, Nathan. First, thank you for being part of the company. Thanks for having me over for the podcast, and just looking forward. Hope you look forward to your next investor update.
For sure, I am, and I'm sure we'll do a round 2, 6 to 9 months down the road, hear how you're doing, and hear some more of your awesome lessons learned. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Have a good night.